Hi everyone, it's Chloe again. Thanks for joining me for this podcast episode. It's been almost a month since the last one. I've had so many stories to tell you lately. If you follow me on Facebook, you know I've been sharing constantly because my life has been packed with events. So many interesting things I want to share, but I've been so busy traveling and working that by the time I get home, it's dark and I just fall asleep. It took me forever to get this episode out. Today's episode is more of an update, a bit of a rambling chat with you all. So, let's get straight to the main topic. Today, I want to talk about fear. I think I've discussed this topic quite a lot before. I haven't dedicated an entire episode to it, but I've always brought it up in my previous podcasts. I don't know how this episode will be different, but it feels different. I think in the past, fears used to consume me, paralyzing me from doing anything. When I was scared of something, I'd go into a full-blown crisis, I couldn't do anything, I'd just freeze in that state. Perhaps as I've grown up and gained more experiences than when I was younger, I've learned that sometimes fear isn't real. Sometimes, fear exists only in my imagination, and in reality, things aren't as they seem. The nature of the situation isn't that way. So, I guess I've slowly learned to lean into fear a little more. And I believe fear is always necessary to help us discern what's dangerous and what's not. If no one had any fears or worries, I think this world would become a bit chaotic. I think one of the biggest factors influencing my fears is the fear of failure. Previously, my definition of failure was when I set a goal and couldn't achieve it. That's what I called failure. But now I don't see it that way anymore. I believe there's no such thing as failure, only an ending. Perhaps something wasn't right for me, and I chose to end that pursuit, either voluntarily or involuntarily. For a long time now, I've removed the word failure from my life's dictionary. The main reasons I used to fear failure were, first, losing faith in myself. Because when you fail repeatedly, you start to doubt yourself a lot. And second, I feared not being able to recover. I'm the type of person who puts all their eggs in one basket. If I'm passionate about something, I'll dedicate a lot of time, effort, and hope to achieving it. And if I fail, I'd feel incredibly heartbroken, like I wouldn't have any resources left to support my recovery. I'd put all my eggs in one basket, so what would I have left to back me up, to prepare for what comes next? The more I feared failure, the less I dared to do anything. And doing nothing is, fundamentally, a failure, isn't it? Because, as I said, my old definition of failure was not achieving what I wanted. So if I did nothing, it was 100% failure, with no chance of achieving anything I wanted. Then sometimes I think about how life is designed for us to become adults, and it's quite interesting. To become an adult, we have to go to school, right? And I see that the process of schooling teaches us that we improve progressively by making more mistakes along the way. For example, I don't know if preparing for university entrance exams now is similar to my time. But back then, after we'd mastered all the basic knowledge, we'd move on to practice exams. And when doing practice exams, initially, we'd make many mistakes, even very basic ones. But the more mistakes we made and the more practice exams we did, correcting those errors, we'd eventually score around 8 out of 10. And only from 8 points upwards did intelligence truly come into play, meaning only the smart ones, those who could grasp things quickly, achieved higher scores. That way of thinking has stuck with me until now. I think, okay, if I fail at something, it's simply because I haven't done it enough and haven't accumulated enough experience. So, my way of dealing with it is to learn more about that thing. And learning as we grow up, once we're over 18 and have graduated from high school, isn't just about learning from books anymore. It can be learning in any aspect of life. For instance, people working in agriculture learn how to cultivate better. Those in diplomacy learn to improve their EQ and IQ. My point is, learning as an adult isn't confined to textbooks anymore. Another one of my fears, and it's quite trivial and funny, is the fear of being laughed at by others. A long time ago, before I started doing podcasts like this, I used to work as an MC. Being an MC means being on stage, and you'll inevitably be judged to some extent. Even after I stopped being an MC, I still really feared judgment. Back when I worked at my old company, it was an English-only environment, and because my English wasn't great, I was terrified of speaking it. I was so scared to speak up in meetings, even though sometimes I'd have really good ideas. But I just couldn't bring myself to say them and became very withdrawn. I could read and write reasonably well, but speaking? Never. If something was absolutely essential, I'd text my colleagues, that's how bad it was, everyone. I was always afraid my pronunciation wasn't good, and I thought I had a very distinct Vietnamese accent. So I just kept thinking, what if I speak and people laugh at me? Even though I'd never actually tried, and I didn't know if people would laugh or not, I just couldn't bring myself to do it. Perhaps you've heard this a lot from many language YouTubers who are really good. Learning a language is a journey where you keep making mistakes, then you find those mistakes and correct them, and that's how you improve, right? And I thought, oh my goodness, I can't live with this fear forever and I can't always text. So, I had to find a way to overcome it. Now, I don't think my accent or my English speaking voice is necessarily better, but you know the power of confidence, right? When you shed your anxieties and insecurities, you definitely appear more attractive and engaging. I've noticed that when you learn a language, you're not just learning the language itself, but you're also living with that language and its culture. For example, I'm currently learning another language, Chinese, and I find something very interesting. With each language, I become a different person with a different mindset. For instance, when I speak English, I have to be very direct, concise, and clearly express my emotions and personal opinions. But with Chinese, it's different. Chinese and Vietnamese are quite similar, perhaps due to the influence of Confucianism in the past. So when we converse, we have to be subtle, use soft and gentle words, like words cost no money but speak them to please. We rarely speak directly, often using indirect, softened, or avoided phrasing, not expressing our ego much, and usually we must be humble, very humble, not arrogant. Also, Chinese, like Vietnamese, has many idioms and historical allusions. In fact, Chinese has even more idioms and allusions than Vietnamese. So, you truly need to understand the culture to be able to use those idioms and allusions. I think when you learn a new language, you shouldn't be afraid of being judged or anything. Generally, when you learn a new language, you're like a baby learning to speak. Do adults ever laugh at or judge a baby for not speaking correctly, right? So, don't be afraid to practice. In the past, when I read about fears, people often said, "Oh, fear isn't real. Don't be afraid. Step out of your comfort zone." And now, having gone through quite a few foolish acts, quite a few times stepping out of my so-called comfort zone, I find that encouraging phrase, "step out of your comfort zone," to be utterly nonsensical. The original English phrase is stepping out of the comfort zone. I don't understand why comfort zone was translated into Vietnamese as vung and tone, safe zone. The word comfort means ease or pleasantness. The intention is to step out of your comfortable asterisk zone, meaning when you've been doing something for so long that it feels unchallenging, uninteresting, you should step out of that comfortable area and seek out more challenging things. It's not about stepping out of an asterisk safe zone. A safe zone is literally an asterisk safe zone. Have you noticed that when we go to the beach, there are signs for safe zones? That's an area where it's safe to swim and play in the water. Outside that zone, you might get caught in a rip current or get hit by waves. In short, it's a life-threatening area. No one encourages you to step out of an asterisk safe zone. It's about stepping out of an asterisk comfortable zone to find more challenging things and upgrade yourself. What's the point of stepping out of a safe zone into a dangerous one? If you step out of a safe zone without a plan or preparation, you'll genuinely encounter many dangers, leading to exhaustion, both physically and mentally. So now, when I read a phrase like, "step out of your safe zone," it honestly grates on my nerves. I genuinely see it as extremely irresponsible advice. Not every mistake can be fixed. You might think I'm contradicting myself, right? Earlier, I said we make many mistakes, learn from them, and get better. But now I'm saying not every mistake can be fixed. That's because mistakes come in different types. Some mistakes allow us to learn and gain experience, while others are serious errors that lead to extremely grave consequences, perhaps beyond our ability to fix, and they might even affect others. That's why I say, stepping out of your safe zone is nonsense. We should only step out of our comfortable asterisk zone, one step at a time, with a plan and preparation to anticipate difficulties. And if things don't go as planned, if difficulties arise, they'll still be within a scale we can handle, or we can seek help from our support system. But doing truly foolish, crazy things is just insane. I think if there were an award for expansive foolishness, I'd be among the top contenders. I've done so many stupid things, everyone, foolish acts that were like playing pranks on myself. Sometimes I wonder why I did those things. Then I manipulate myself into thinking, so that when I'm 80, I'll look back and think, oh, my life was quite glorious. I'll tell my grandchildren about a rather interesting life, becoming a fascinating old lady with silver hair and many life experiences. That's looking at it positively. But I've also made many mistakes that I couldn't fix. For example, in my most recent podcast episode about toxic independence, I mentioned it, right? I don't want to make anyone afraid of mistakes or failure, but we always need a plan, and we always need preparation to go with it. Because it's not always good to jump directly from a safe zone to a dangerous zone. We should only step out of our comfortable zone and gradually expand it, bit by bit, until we achieve the goal we set for ourselves. Back in my hometown, which was quite poor, when people bought glass cups, they were usually of poor quality and couldn't withstand hot water. The people in my village would solve this by boiling the cups in a pot of water until they became resilient and could handle high temperatures. When boiling them, you had to start with low heat, gradually increase it, and boil for a long time, increasing the water temperature slowly. But if you just threw them into hot or boiling water from the start, the cups would shatter. They couldn't adapt gradually. We are the same. We shouldn't just jump into the fire and boiling water. Instead, we should embark on a long journey that requires persistence and perseverance to gradually expand our comfortable zone until we can feel comfortable even in dangerous, challenging areas. Anyone who tells you to step out of your safe zone, do they take responsibility for the consequences of their advice? Don't do that, everyone, please don't. Of course, I understand that there might be some young listeners here who are very young and they'll be like me a few years ago. At that point, our wisdom only extends so far. We haven't grown up, our understanding and intelligence are limited. We can't imagine many scenarios. That's why we need someone to guide us. But it's also possible that at that time, I was too young, too naive to even know that I could ask others for help or where to find such people. I didn't even know there was a concept like mentor-mentee relationships in the world. I didn't know there would be people who had walked before me and done these things. So, naturally, I had to do everything myself and stumble. And that's when I needed to have compassion for myself, to give myself the chance to make mistakes and forgive myself. I only have myself as my closest companion, so don't hate, don't resent, don't despise yourself. We pity ourselves enough. We've already failed, we've made mistakes, and then to hate ourselves on top of that. In those moments, it's okay to accept that I'm wrong, and after I'm wrong, I'll learn a few things right. Now you might be getting confused, right? Earlier, I said not all mistakes can be fixed and so on. But, and I must say this again, no matter how well we plan or prepare, unexpected factors will always arise. That's when I hope that if those unfortunate things happen, I have the resilience to recover from failure thanks to my prior preparations, and I also have compassion and empathy for myself. I've rambled a bit and gone off topic. Now I'm talking like some kind of multi-level marketing guru, talking about failure and success as if I'm super successful, like I'm as rich as billionaire Elon Musk or something. Anyway, let's get back to the topic of fear. Recently, I had a quite interesting experience, and it's precisely what made me want to do this podcast episode today. This year, I've traveled to quite a few places. Each month, I'd visit 1 or 2 provinces. All in all, it's been a pretty exciting year for me. I've been to many different places, but most of the time, over 90% of the places I've been, I went alone. There were times when I was in a forest, completely alone, with no one else around, just me in the middle of it. In terms of safety, I think it was quite secure because these were service areas with security guards, and it was quite difficult to get past the security gate. So, in terms of human safety, it was very safe within that forest area. I grew up in the countryside, everyone, so ever since I was little, I've heard many ghost stories. I've never seen a ghost, but I still feared them. And when I traveled alone, staying in a wooden cabin in the middle of the forest at night often had very strange sounds. There would be sounds of different animals, and the rustling of trees and leaves as the wind swept through, the howling of the forest. The first night I slept there, hearing those sounds, I was quite scared. After I heard the regular rhythm of those howling sounds, I realized, it's just the trees howling, nothing to be afraid of. On the second night I was in the forest, I heard a sound like crying. A sound of crying, very wronged and aggrieved, coming from the edge of the forest, near a stream where I was staying. At that moment, I wasn't afraid of human elements, because as I said, if I called, the security guards from outside the forest would come, and it was quite difficult to enter the area. So, in terms of human safety, it was very secure. I wasn't afraid. But I started thinking about spiritual matters. Because at that time, I was in Dalat, and as you know, Dalat is an extremely spiritual place, everyone. I don't know why, but many ghost stories seem to originate from Dalat and Vung Tau, according to my friend, because they are sacred lands. I'm not sure about that, but at that moment, I really started to feel scared. I genuinely wanted to call security and leave that forest in the middle of the night, move to the city instead of staying in the suburbs like that. Then I started to have an internal debate thinking, I'm someone who loves to explore. I'm someone who loves to travel to different places. Even later, when I have a partner, someone to accompany me, there will still be times when I want to travel alone. Because traveling alone gives you time to enjoy and understand yourself, to understand life. It's so interesting, everyone. If you travel alone enough, you'll find it very fascinating. And I thought, if I let this fear get in my way now, perhaps from now on, I'll never dare to travel alone again. Or if I do travel alone, I'll only dare to go to cities. I won't dare to go to forests anymore. I won't dare to go up to the mountains and down to the sea like I do now. It means I'd be limiting my experiences, and I'd really regret that. I don't want that to happen because this journey of mine has been so exciting. I've discovered so many wonderful things about myself to the point that I truly love myself, everyone. I feel like I'm madly in love with myself because I'm discovering so many new things about myself, and I think, why didn't I see these things before? Now I see how amazing, unique, and new I am. I'm falling in love with myself all over again, something like that. So this journey is so joyful, and I don't want this fear to overwhelm me and prevent me from continuing. But at that moment, I was genuinely terrified. I was truly scared because of that crying sound. Imagine, in a pitch-dark space in the middle of a forest, hearing a wronged, heartbroken cry in a dense forest with howling trees and wind, next to a gurgling stream in Dalat, Lamdong, a sacred land where people often talk about ghost stories and spiritual matters. And I could clearly pinpoint exactly where the crying was coming from. My room had 3 layers of doors, and the crying seemed to be coming from the outermost door. Passing through 2 layers of doors would allow me to verify the source of the crying. And at that moment, I thought, if I call security now and leave this forest, it means I've believed in a fear. It means I've believed in something I haven't verified. I don't know if it's really a ghost or not, but I would have believed it was a ghost. And from now on, I would believe that ghosts exist, and I would never dare to travel alone again. So I decided, okay, I will fight this fear because I am human, right? I am human, and if anyone asks me what value I'm always proud of about myself, I'm always proud to be a kind person. And I think I am a kind person, and if ghosts really exist in this world, they would have no reason to harm me. Explaining it now, it sounds so clear, right? But at that moment, there were a million voices in my head. A million voices in my head, and I decided to open the door to find out what that sound was outside. When I opened the first layer of the door, the crying sound became very clear. At that moment, my heart was pounding, thump, 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 and I started to associate it with horror movie scenarios where if I opened the second door, the danger might come from behind me, not in front, and I wouldn't be prepared. So I kept opening the door while looking behind me, truly terrified, and I recited Buddhist chants 1,000 times, opening the door and chanting. I was so scared. I opened the second door. By the third door, I genuinely didn't dare to open it. That area was very secure, but nothing is 100% safe, right? What if someone out there wanted to harm me? But the outermost third door was a glass door, so I could see through it. So I decided not to open it any further. I stood there and looked. Oh my God, I stood there so scared that I cried. I actually cried. And I intended to just close the door again, but I don't know where a powerful surge of energy came from. At that moment, I stood there, gazing into the pitch-black night with my phone's flashlight on, but it didn't really illuminate much. Staring into the dark night like that, I didn't see anything except my own reflection in the glass. I was so scared, but I forced myself to stay there and listen for a while longer. Then the sound came from a little kitten, everyone. A tiny kitten by the stream, perhaps lost from its mother or something. If you own cats or live in areas with many cats, you'll know that at night, kittens make sounds that resemble a crying girl. It's truly terrifying, especially by a stream. When I realized the sound was from a cat, I breathed a sigh of relief. I thought for 20 whole minutes, while I was opening the doors and searching for the sound, my spirit was in a state of surrender at rock bottom. I was truly, truly scared. Even though I kept telling myself, I'm a kind person and surely nothing bad will happen to me, I was still very afraid. I wanted to give up, I wanted to run away, run into the house and flee that place. But I stubbornly stayed there. A moment later, knowing it was a cat, I literally sighed with relief. I thought if I hadn't persevered until the end, I would have believed that ghosts were real and I would have spread rumors about it. Maybe I would have even come on this podcast and told everyone how I saw a ghost in Dalat. After that, I went back to my room, called the security guards in the area to come get the cat. And that whole night, I slept soundly. So from now on, I think I can travel alone and be less afraid of ghosts and spirits. Before this, I always had a bit of spiritual fear because I grew up with ghost stories, everyone. People in my village would tell ghost stories all the time, so I was really scared. I think our fears are like that too. When we're afraid, our minds create a million different scenarios, intensifying that fear, when in reality, it might not be like that at all. But if I don't try, if I don't act, I would have believed in that fear already. And I think what I need to do is verify the truthfulness of the fear. Is it a real fear? The moment I opened those doors to verify where that crying sound came from is something I'm very proud of. And I think even when I'm really, really old, I'll never forget that one night in my 20s in Dalat, I overcame myself to verify what that fear was. I'm truly proud. Although I think anyone who's an atheist and doesn't believe in ghosts, or anyone who's not easily scared, listening to my story won't understand what on earth this girl was afraid of. But at that moment, I was so scared I cried. I cried, and my hand trembled so much I couldn't open the door smoothly. It just kept shaking, shaking. I was truly, truly scared. But in the end, as I told you all, that fear wasn't real. Today's episode was a bit hard to follow, wasn't it, everyone? Because this episode was truly just a rambling chat. I spoke without a script, so my delivery might have been a bit winding. I hope you don't find it too annoying. I'm saving the really interesting stories for another episode when I have more complete content and a more organized presentation. I said I'm saving them, but I don't know when I'll actually get around to making that episode. So today's episode is more of an update than anything profound. I hope you listen and don't feel too annoyed or anything. Thank you all for listening until now. Goodbye and see you next time.